Good morning, everyone. We are going to start our class, next class. In the previous class, we just studied about the diffraction through crystal. We just have a glance of what we have studied in the last class. So, we started with the diffraction. So, diffraction is nothing but it is the bending of the light ray at the boundaries of the obstacle. So, we just call that phenomena as diffraction. So, what is the condition of diffraction? So, the condition of diffraction says that the thickness of a obstacle or any slit should be in comparable with the wavelength of the incident light. So, these diffraction in crystal has been introduced to us by the German physicist Loe, suggested the three-dimensional arrangement of the points, atoms, right? Imaginary point, that is lattice points or atoms in a crystal which produce the diffraction. And X-ray diffraction in crystal, actually the wavelength of X-rays is in the order of the angstrom. So hence, which is producing the X-rays. What we can say here is that the production of X-rays, that is a normal phenomena that we already studied in your lower classes. So in order to refresh your understanding what you have previous knowledge, how these X-rays are produced. This is a schematic diagram which shows that this is the metal surface from where the rays are made to incident, and when they incident on this particular, what you can say, uh, the X-rays are produced when the speeding electrons are colliding with the metal targets, and the source of electron is nothing but it is a hot filament. You can just see in the schematic diagram which shows that where is actually the hot filament. This is run, this is the hot filament, and very high oxidating voltage between the cathode, which has been mentioned. See, there is a sign here, right? Negative, here you are having a positive sign, is the anode, and this is your cathode. So this is a high, what you can say, very hot filament. You can just see from the hot filament, high accelerating voltage are in between the cathode and the anode, and the metal targets, whatever the metal we are taking, that may be copper, aluminum, or magnesium. So here, so depending upon these conditions, right, Brax has introduced the condition of the diffraction phenomena inside the crystal. So whenever the X-rays are made to incident on the crystal, so that crystal is consisting of atoms, and what he has done is that his consideration is that there is the arrangement of the atoms are nothing but we could just call that a geometrically it is planes. So the English physicist, that is Bragg and his son, W.H. Bragg and his son W.L. Bragg, has developed a relationship in the year 1913, and we say that whenever these X-rays are made to incident on the plane or which is containing the atoms in the periodic manner, which is placed in a periodic manner inside the crystals geometrically. So that particular, whenever the X-rays are made to incident on these atomic plane, so what is happening here is that at different angles we are getting a reflection phenomena. So that reflection phenomena is nothing but we are just representing with respect to theta. See, whenever a light ray is made to incident on these atomic plane, so they definitely will get a reflection, and that reflection I'm talking about the on this, if the X-rays are hitting the first atomic plane, what is the meaning of this first atomic plane? Geometrically, let us consider some horizontal assumption. So you can just see here, we'll show you. Now this is one atomic plane. You can just see the geometrical assumption, one atomic plane, and this is another, and so on. You will get a different atomic plane. So by X-rays, if the X-ray is hitting this particular, see here, this atomic plane. So what we are doing, first X-ray, and this is X-ray 2, and you will get a different atomic planes. So here we just confining ourselves to X-ray, first X-ray and the second X-ray. It is only for your understanding purpose that we have to just mark it as X-ray 1, X-ray 2. So when it is an incident, see, it is getting reflected here also, and some of the X-rays are getting inside the second atomic plane reflected and coming back. So in this particular manner, so again they are making some angle. You can just see that they are making some angle theta. So like this, what you can say, the at certain angles of incidence. So that is called theta. So the distance between the atomic layers in the crystals are nothing but d. We are just taking that two. Let us consider any. We just consider ourselves to any two atomic plane, and in that atomic planes, that minimum distance covered by the two layers, right? Any two layers inside the crystal, that is small d, and the wavelength of the incident X-ray beam, right? Lambda is the wavelength of X-ray, incident X-ray beam, and n is any integer. You already know why we are uh, taking it as a small n, that is integer. So in the previous class, just we have discussed about this. N is an integer. So this is one of the example of X-ray wave interference, commonly known as X-ray diffraction. And this is the what you can say the exact evidence of periodic atomic structure of the crystal. So now the periodic structure of the crystal, when you see it, what is constructive and destructive interference of waves? When you just have a clear idea, to have a very clear idea. So what we are doing here is that we are just taken. This is considered to be right. You just take a line segment here. When we find that the waves here, when we compare it, these two rays, you can just see this starting from the origin here. See, the amplitude has been varied here. The amplitude of each wave has been varied. So this particular arrow mark indicates that this is the direction of propagation of the wave. And here your AW and AW prime. So here what is that? That is the difference of the amplitude uh, with respect to the what you can say this particular this particular portion. You can just see this particular portion, just mark it as AW, and here we are just marking it as AW dash. You can just have a clear idea regarding the amplitude of these two different waves which are in comparison. So we just trying to say here, you just we are taking a reference point here. So you can just see that each reference point in the first waveform, second and the third waveform, you find that this particular position is same. So we can say that these particular waves are in phase with each other, and if the waves are in phase with each other, then whatever the pattern you will observe, that pattern is considered to be come under the category of constructive interference. So why we are we want to know what is constructive and destructive interference. So this is a direct relationship with our topic, that is X-ray diffraction. So once you should have a clear idea regarding this constructive and destructive interference. So what is happening when the diffraction is taking place with respect to the atomic planes? Then definitely you will have a very much what you can say clear idea regarding the uh, diffraction of X-rays, right, in the atomic planes. So here you can just see this again. We are just taking an example of these three waveforms. So you can just see three waveforms. You will find that the same C reference point we have taken here. So here also there is a reference point C. So now here we just taken here. You can just see the condition. This is a mathematical condition, resultant what you can say resultant amplitude. Here also A denotes the amplitude, here D is the propagation. Now this line segment denotes the propagation, and you can just see that here C is differing with respect to the C in the constructive interference, and hence the we can say that the waves are out of phase with each other. So here you can know how these waves are when considered to be in a two different aspect. So why it is called constructive interference and why it is destructive interference geometrically and also mathematically, you can we had a relationship to in order to understand what is actually the meaning of constructive interference and destructive interference of the waves, right? So now when we go to the next one for the derivation of Bragg's law, you already know that Bragg's law has been already taught in your lower classes, that intermediate level. Here also we are just having an in what you can say Bragg's law again in order to see we are very much what you can say interested in the application of the diffraction of X-rays. See, since whatever the you are been taught in the physics, so that is concerned with the applications of the physics to your you can say the core engineering subject. So that is the reason that before going for the application, you need to understand some basic concepts and basic laws which are governing the technology, which is directly related to the technology, that is application of the science. So that is the reason that we need to understand this again, what you have already read, and already you had an information regarding the Bragg's equation. We can say Bragg's law, Bragg's equation, or Bragg's condition. What this Bragg's condition or Bragg's law says that 2d sine theta, mathematically 2d sine theta is equal to n lambda. So how we got this 2d sine theta is equal to n lambda? So mathematically we are going to prove it by considering the two atomic planes here. You can just see there are two atomic planes here, right? These are considered to be two atomic planes. Again, numerous number of planes you will find that inside this particular, what you can say, this line contains one more atomic plane, another, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. So numerous number of atomic planes you will find in the crystal, what you can say, normal crystal. So here, for our understanding purpose, we just taken the two atomic planes. So first of all, so geometrically, what we are drawing. See, first X-ray is incidenting the exactly the first atomic plane. You can just see this. The first X-ray is made to incident on the first atomic plane. So it is hitting the this particular instant, and again it is getting reflected. It has been shown by the dark black arrow. You can just see this is X-ray 1. Okay. So the second X-ray is made to incident on the atomic plane. So some of the X-rays will get reflected back, and the other X-ray will get reflected back like this. So what you will find here is that, so the extra part which has been what you can say traveled by the X-ray when compared with the first X-ray, the second X-ray, what is the extra path followed is followed by the second X-ray with respect to the first one. You can just see that has been mentioned with the dotted lines here. This term indicates, so for geometrically what we are doing here is that we are just making that particular point where it has been traveled. The X-ray 2 has been traveled more distance when compared to the X-ray 1. So what is that important distance that is called AB and BC? This AB and BC, what you can say, this is the extra path traveled by the X-ray. So that instant, in order to understand it more clearly, what we have done is that we have just here, we can have a right angle triangle. You can just see this, if you take a reference point here, this completely makes a right angle triangle, and this is also right angle triangle. So this is the angle theta. So AB, you can just see here, if you just see it in an inclined manner, so you'll get that this is AB, right? ABC or ABZ, whatever you want to write it down, you can just, this is only the denotation part. So the parameters, whatever you are denoting, that parameters, it depends upon your comfortableness. You can just make it X, Y, Z, or ABC, A1, B1, A2, your wish, right? So now what is this distance traveled by the first ray with respect to second ray? This distance is nothing but interplanar spacing. So from here to here, so that distance is considered to be the interplanar spacing. That interplanar spacing is represented with the small d. So this is about the constructive interference. These constructive interference only occur when the path difference is equal to n. This is the main condition. See, this is a condition what we have studied in the constructive interference. Here, the path difference, here you can see the waveforms here, right? Three different waveforms where we are saying that the path difference should be equal to integral multiple of lambda. So what is that path difference is equal to n lambda. So this path difference, if you take path difference, so what is the extra distance traveled by the second ray with respect to the X-ray? That will be your path difference. So what is that second, from the diagram what you can see, AB plus BC. And that is the reason that instead of path difference, what I am writing here is that from the diagram, from the geometrical diagram, what we are seeing on the screen, so n lambda is equal to AB plus BC. So what is, see here, AB is completely equal to BC. You can see this is comparably, they are approximately equal. So AB is equal to BC.
No, no, instead of BC, what you can write? AB. So n lambda is equal to 2AB, right? So now, when you consider this as a right angle triangle, so what we want to know, what is actually what is AB equal to with respect to the geometrical figure, whatever we are seeing on the screen. So what is that A? How I will get the value of AB? So by considering the trigonometric ratios. So which trigonometric ratio? What you want actually? What is the value of AB? So the side which is opposite to the angle is considered to be the opposite side. This is opposite side, this is hypotenuse, and this is the adjacent side. You can just see on the screen, right? So the side, again I'm repeating, see, the side which is opposite to the angle is considered to be the opposite side, and here adjacent to this opposite side you will find the adjacent side, and this is the hypotenuse. So these which trigonometric ratio we have to use here? Sin theta. Why we are confining ourselves to sin theta? We want the value of AB. So sin theta is equal to opposite by hypotenuse. So we want AB. So just I'm writing that sin theta is equal to AB by D. So what is the AB value you got from the geometrical figure? Whatever we know. So AB is nothing but D sin theta. So what I can write here? 2AB as nothing but lambda, n lambda is equal to 2D sin theta. So this is for, see here, what n indicates here it's an one atomic plane, n is equal to 1. So here lambda is equal to 2D sin theta. So why it is written here HKL? So what it means? Just we have just had a very detailed discussion regarding the Miller indices, where HKL are nothing but it denotes the atomic planes, right? So Miller has given the designation of this HKL, that is Miller indices, with respect to the planes. So the we are talking about the distances of D is what? Interplanar distance. So it is a distance between the consecutive planes. So therefore, so the when you talk about plane, so what you can write instead of D suffix HKL. So D suffix HKL is nothing but that is the interplanar spacing of the planes, whatever you are seeing on the screen, right? So lambda is equal to 2D sin theta, right? So you understood now how we got the geometrically n lambda is equal to 2D sin theta by using the, see, the we are talking in terms of constructive interference. See, where there is a if there is a constructive interference, then only the path difference is equal to the integral multiple of lambda. So these particular conditions should be satisfied when you if there is a condition like this, right? So constructive interference takes place when mathematically when path difference is equal to n lambda. So this is the condition where you will get the constructive interference. So n lambda, again I'm repeating, n lambda is AB plus BC. AB is equal to BC and n lambda is equal to 2AB. And you know that AB value we can get it from the, you can just see this. See, we have taken this right angle triangle. You get two right angles triangle. You can just see. This is one right angle triangle and this is another right angle triangle. I've just taken this right angle triangle in order to get the value of AB. Since AB is equal to BC, therefore I need not to go again for this particular right angle triangle. So that is the reason that I've just gone for this on this particular triangle. So AB, C or ABZ, whatever you want, you can just make a note of it. So this is the uh, case for the solving mathematically n lambda is equal to 2D sin theta. Now, in the you will find that there are different problems with respect to n lambda is equal to 2D sin theta. We just say that these glancing angles are nothing but these angles with respect to atomic planes, right? So if the glancing angle, if the glancing angle, what you can say, if the order is 1, so we are there, then they are talking about the first atomic plane. If the order is 2, then see here it is written, a beam of X-rays of wavelength 0.07 nanometer is diffracted by, you can just see HKL, that is 110 plane of a rock salt, right, with lattice constant, that is, what is lattice constant? Small a is given as 0.28 nanometer. Find the glancing angle, that is theta, we need to find out for which order of diffraction? Second order. So second order of diffraction means this one. See, this is called second order of diffraction. So the n value automatically becomes what? 2. for the second order of diffraction. So like this you can just find out different what you can say, solve the different problems, and definitely we should we'll just discuss about the problems when we complete this particular chapter. So here now specifically we are going for different diffraction methods, X-ray diffraction. See, till now we just studied what is the meaning of diffraction, what is that condition which for which we can go for the diffraction. So why we need to understand this diffraction? Why means what we have to know? Why? Because we want to know the concentration of atoms, where we can find more concentration of atoms. So how we can know the more concentration of atoms? When you just incident some rays, X-rays. Here particularly we are talking about X-rays, right? Why? Because these X-rays, why I am just taking it as X-rays? Why? Because these X-rays, wavelength of these X-rays is incomparable with the what you can say, the atomic distance or a planar distance, interplanar spacing. So that is the reason that we are talking about the X-ray diffraction. See, the X-ray diffraction methods are very much what you can say different. So first method that is there for the X-ray by means of using the X-ray diffraction, we can know different properties and what are the applications. Why we are concentrating on X-ray diffraction, we will know in the next slides, right? So first of all, what are the X-ray diffraction methods? So there are three different methods, X-ray diffraction methods. One should know that by means of these three methods, you can get a complete information regarding the crystal structure, right, and the crystal properties, right? So the X-ray diffraction methods are Loy method, powder method, and rotating crystal method. So here we are just confining our studies to the powder method because of its various applications, right? So this is also having a different application, but in for your purpose, for your in the syllabus purpose, so in the syllabus only powder method has been given. So therefore we are just confining our studies of X-ray diffraction method to the powder method. So we are not going for this Laue and rotating crystal method. This is only for reference we want to show you. So now what is actually the powder method is all about? So what are the things which has been taken? See, first of all we start with powder. What is the meaning of powder here? So what we are doing is that we are just making the crystal into small what you can say pieces, and that small pieces are see I cannot I should not tell pieces, but it is rather than it's like an salt whatever. See, for example, just consider the salt which has been using in we are been using in our kitchen, right? So sodium chloride crystal. So like fine powder sample of the crystal, right? We will make a fine powder sample which is used instead of complete a single crystal. In the powder method, see, when you talk about powder, your sample should be in a powder form. So that is a primary condition of powder method. When I say powder, the crystal has been made into powder. So very fine powder sample is used instead of a single crystal. And these powder sample is nothing but it is an assembly of, see what is powder sample? Powder is nothing but tiny crystal particles, right, which are oriented, right, in different random directions with respect to the incident beam. That is, we are talking about which type of beam? X-ray beam. And that X-ray beam is single colored beam. See, mono is single, chromatic is colored, right? So single colored X-ray beam. And these diffraction come from all the set of planes present in the powder sample. See, you will get different, we talk about the powder sample. That powder sample is consisting of tiny particles, so tiny crystals. So tiny crystals, different planes. Whenever you are incidentting the X-ray on these planes, so it is getting what you can say diffracted. So at different angles. So the diffraction will come for all the sets of planes present in the sample. So what we are taking now, this is the powder method. See, these are primary things which are needed to move forward, to proceed further, to understand the crystal structure and the properties of the crystal. So we are just starting with the important aspect, just the three important points of powder method. So what apart from this, what we require? We require a camera. So which type of which has been given by the this cam? Why we are that camera, to adjacent to the camera word, you had some other words, right? D.B. Shearer camera. So this is the name of the scientist who had designed the particular camera. So in order to know the orientations or the you can say the different planes which are present in the uh, atomic planes which are present inside the crystal. So that is what a D.B. Shearer camera. The D.B. Shearer is the name of the scientist. So what they have designed a camera. So therefore it has been named as D.B. Shearer camera. So what the particular how we are taking this particular sample and how the samples have been placed in between the camera, that we are going to learn. See here, a very small amount of powder material is sealed. So you can just see a small amount of powder sample is sealed into a fine capillary tube. You can know the capillary tube. You already know in the chemistry lab. So what is the capillary tube? How it look like? So what we are taking a small powder material, and that small powder material is sealed, is fixed into a fine capillary tube. And these capillary tube is nothing but, you already know, it is made up of glass, and they does not diffract X-rays. This is very, very important. So a small powder material is sealed. So powder material has been placed inside the capillary tube, right? That capillary tube is made up of glass, and that does not diffract X-rays. So this is very, very important. And these sample, see, inside the capillary tube, we are having a small powder material. We are placing the powder material inside the capillary tube, and that capillary tube is placed in the D.B. Shearer camera and accurately aligned in the center of the camera. I will show you the diagram, right? The next slide, you can just see the diagram very clearly. You will understand it. So first we start with the, see here, we start with the powder sample. The powder sample should be very fine, and that powder sample is consisting of tiny particles which are oriented in different directions. And with respect to the beam which has been incident on these powder sample, should be monochromatic X-ray. And whenever this particular sample is been incident with the X-ray, you will get different set of planes. And so D.B. Shearer camera, what we are doing here, a small amount of the powder sample, you'll find powder sample, we are just taking small amount of powdered material which is sealed into a fine capillary tube which is made up of glass, and that does not diffract the X-rays. And by placing that small capillary tube exactly at the center of D.B. Shearer camera, right? So X-rays enters the camera through a collimator. What is a collimator? You know that collimator is nothing but the particular part of the what you can say the part of that particular camera where it will make the beam to travel in that particular region only. It will not make the beam to scatter, to deviate. So what it will do is that it will make the beam to um, to travel in that particular path only. That is called collimator. So the powder diffracts the X-rays in accordance with the Bragg law to produce the cones. When you incident the X-ray inside the, what you can say, capillary tube, so which is placed exactly at the D.B. Shearer camera, so X-rays will be X-rays will be diffracted. And how it is diffracted? So it satisfies the condition of 2D sin theta is equal to n lambda. When it is satisfied, you see that diffraction pattern has been shown here. So you can see here a powdered sample is there. We are incidenting the X-rays. When you incident the X-rays, you can just see here. There is a hole here. When you incident the X-rays, this is the input. Here where the X-rays is made to incident in the capillary tube. So what will happen is that it gets scattered. The rays will get scattered. So when the rays will get scattered at different angles, so you'll get this type of images. These type of images. You can just see this is a type of image that you will observe. So here you can find that these images are taking the form of a nearly circle. So these cones are intersect a strip of photographic. This is a strip of photographic plate which is located exactly. See, you can just see this is a strip of photographic plate where you'll get this type of structure image. So the cones intersect a strip of photographic film located in the cylindrical camera. You know that wherever we find a camera, therefore then that camera will have a photographic film. So that photographic film, right, when you incident the X-rays, it will be scattered. The X-rays will be scattered, and you'll get a pattern. That pattern has been shown here. So to produce a characteristic set of arcs on the film. So when the film is removed from the camera and flattened, see when I remove the camera from the, what you can say, when I remove the film from the camera, so that has been taken inside the dark room, where you'll just take out that particular film, and it has been processed. It will be processed and show the diffraction lines, and these diffraction lines are nothing but of the incident and the transmitted beams. You can just see there is a holes here. There you can find there are two holes. That holes has been indicated with a dark one point here, where you can find that this is the incident ray, and that here you'll get a diffracted or you can say transmitted beam. So this has been shown with the dark line here, dark spot. So where you'll find that there's an incident, one of the beam is incident beam and another is a transmitted beam. Now, so for a different sample of several randomly oriented, you get different orientations here. So these orientations is nothing but over a single crystal, a sample of several random oriented single crystal. The diffracted beam will be lying on several cones. You can just see this is small pieces of the crystal. So you get a front reflect. This is a front reflection. Here you'll get a back reflection. So diffracted beam will lie on the surface of several cones. The cones may emerge in all the directions. You can just see they are emerging in all the directions, right? In case of a powdered sample, the diffracted beam is a form of continuous cone. You can just see there are formation of cone here. You can just see this is the cone. There is a diffracted back reflection and the front reflection. A circular film is used to record. See, this is a circular film. This entire film is a circular. You can just see on the screen where you can find that there is a circular film used to record the diffraction pattern. Each cone intersect the film giving diffraction line, and these lines are the arcs. So that has been shown with this particular geometrically. See, you can just see that this particular aspect is considered to be how much angle? It is 2 theta. Here we are just writing it's 2 theta. This particular distance from this is the reference point. So here that is called S1, and here it is S1 and S2. This is the incident and the transmitted beam. So by knowing all the HKL values, say these particular thing 2 theta plus 2 theta incident and the transmitted beam will get 4 theta. So 4 theta is equal to what you can say, or else you can just write it down. This particular instant also you'll get the values like this. So we just have a detailed description of this particular mathematical aspect, right? In the later on class, so this is only the semantical view of the what you can say, how these patterns are observed. Now, what is the application of this X-ray diffraction method, powder method? You can just determine the lattice parameter geometrically and mathematically. Geometrically, you can just see here. This is S1 and this is S2. Front reflection, back reflection, right? This is a complete distance which has been traveled by the X-ray beam and which has been shown by this particular aspect. So we can find out the lattice parameter of the given crystal, right? So now X-ray diffraction technique is used to differentiate between crystalline. Is that a crystal? Whatever the crystal we have taken, crystal powder or powder form, whatever the powder form you have taken, that is actually the crystalline or the amorphous material. So we can just determine it. We can just compare is it a crystalline or amorphous material, and you can determine the structure of the given crystalline material, right? Determination of the how this electron has been distributed within the atoms throughout the unit cell, and also we can know the orientation of the single crystal and the texture, how it is glowing or it is remaining right opaque. Texture of the polygrain materials can also be determined, and measurement of the stress or the strain and the small grain size can also be seen by means of this X-ray diffraction technique, right? So this is the applications, what you can say, by using this technique, what are the applications or what are the things that we can be determined. It has been shown on the screen, right? So now this today's class, we just end the today's class with this X-ray diffraction, and what you can say the advantages so of X-ray diffraction and what are the different disadvantages. You can see that X-rays are very less expensive and most convenient, so they are widely used to determine the crystal structure, and they doesn't absorb very much by the air, so the sample need not be in a vacuum chamber or the evacuated chamber. That is the important aspect, or you can say that is the advantage or the application of using this why X-ray diffraction. This is the advantages. And what is the one disadvantage that we'll found that by using the X-rays, the X-rays that doesn't very strongly interact with the lighter elements. That is only one disadvantage we had. Strongly means that is not exactly accurately what you can say interaction with the lighter elements or lighter material. That is only the disadvantage what we found from the X-ray diffraction. So this to the we'll come to the end of this class. Thank you everyone. So see whatever the doubts or clarification part. So in the next week we just after 16 December we'll just have a topic wise discussion regarding whatever we have completed. So thank you everyone. Thank you for your patience.